Society Matters.
Hello, and thank you for joining me today. I'm your host, Dr. Susanne Bleiberg Seperson, and this is our third episode of the podcast, Antisemitism and the United Nations and in Society, on HMTV. It's my pleasure to introduce a dear friend and colleague, my special guest, Dr. Ina Rozentsvit, who is a medical doctor, MD, and also has a PhD and a Master's of Science in Education and a Master's of Business Administration. She is a physician neurologist and neurorehabilitation specialist trained in psychoanalysis and psychotherapy, with extensive experience in brain injury, autoimmune diseases, neurological and neuropsychiatric conditions, as well as their rehabilitation. She is an educator and author and a fighter against anti-Semitism. Dr. Ina will join me for a conversation about the fight against anti-Semitism and how she became involved. She will also discuss the psychodynamics of anti-Semitism. Welcome, Ina. So let's start with some questions about your background. Could you tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, and where you grew up?
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me. So I was born in Russia proper, what is now Russian Federation, on Volga River in a little town of Astrakhan, where my mom and my dad were finishing their degrees. And then we moved, when I was 2 or 2.5, we moved to Ukraine, where I had one surviving pair of grandparents, my mom's grandparents, parents. And my dad's parents unfortunately perished during the World War II, so I never knew them. So I was named after my grandma that died, and I never knew. And while in Ukraine, you know, at that time I was a child of 60s in Soviet Union. That was a time of Gagarin, the first man on, in cosmos, Tereshkova, the first woman, like all these achievements. I never thought that there was anti-Semitism. I never felt it. Of course, there are some people would say something about Zhidan, meaning dirty Jew, but it's never kind of like sunk in my mind that it was anything anti-Semitic. Then my mom always told me that we should be proud to be Jews. We should be working harder, 10 times harder than others. And I never thought that this is implied anti-Semitism because we had to jump 100 hoops, but she put it in a positive way. So I grew up in feeling good about the world, feeling good about people around, never felt anything. When I had to go to medical school because that's what I wanted to do, and at that time it's only 10 grades. In Soviet Union, it's not 12 grades, and I was 16. I had to go to Russia because in Ukraine you never would get into medical school if you're a Jew. So, and I didn't feel that this is much about it. That's what everybody did. So now looking back, it's implied, kind of systemic anti-Semitism, but it was not aggressive anti-Semitism, not existential anti-Semitism that we experience here in America now. And it's even puzzling and funny and sad that we are talking about anti-Semitism here that is existential. I never was involved in any politics. I never was involved in any, justice activities, because I was just doing my work, I was helping people, helping families with neurological problems, neurodiverse parents with neurodiverse children. That is my passion. But right now, because of the level of anti-Semitism that we experience, I couldn't not get involved. And we left Soviet Union because of anti-Semitic thing. Because at that time, I just got my neurology position, And I was 3 months in emergency department as a neurologist. That's where the best training. And then all of a sudden, the nurse aide stopped talking to me, like a half an hour before the shift in the morning stopped and finished. And I was going around and asking her nicely, is there anything, because I needed her to shave somebody's head so we can do the burr holes and get the blood out because it was brain injury. She doesn't talk to me. And I asked the nurse, who was ethnically Ukrainian, but it was in Moldova. And she said, oh, in Roman, it's a revolution out there. I said, what kind of revolution? I had 2 little kids at that time. They were 3 and 4, or almost 3 and almost 4. I didn't have time for looking at any news. Nothing was real in the news as far as I knew. But apparently when you come out, and it was an academic hospital, it was one of the biggest, hospitals, there were slogans, and I couldn't understand anything because they were writing in Moldavian. The only thing I understand something about Jews. I came back and I asked her, something about Jews. I have 2 children in kindergarten. Tell me now, because I need to know what is it against Jews. And she's like, no, what that slogan said is, we'll drown Russians in the blood of dirty Jews. So that was, some transgenerational button was pushed in me. I was very, loyal to, as I said, it was my country. There were people that I loved, the work that I loved to do. But I told my husband I couldn't wait until he get home. I got children home. We gotta go and call my parents to take children to them, because it's not safe. If in my hospital, we have to leave. He's like, where are you leaving? I said, we gotta leave. So we took children to my parents, and 6 months later, after I stood 3 nights in line, in the American embassy to fill out the application, 6 months later, we left.
I'm amazed that you had such foresight, because so many people, I think of the Holocaust, when they had an opportunity to leave, would say, but I'm not leaving. Germany's my home country. My parents, my grandparents, they all fought, for the German army. And so many people didn't leave when they could. And of course, later on, they couldn't. So it says something about you, that you had the foresight and the willingness to come to a new country. Did you know the language? Did you know anyone here?
I had one cousin who gave us a guarantee, because at that time, we couldn't get to America. You had to go through Austria. In Austria, HIAS, the Jewish organization, would just sort you out, who goes where. If you go to Israel, you can just go straight. But if you want to go to any other country, like America, Canada, Australia, you had to have a guarantor. And we didn't have anybody in Israel. And the culture was my dad did say, many times, when people were saying Israel is this, Israel is that, because, the government wanted to keep people in. They didn't want them to leave. And people were even punished if they wanted to go, they were thrown out of jobs. They were refuseniks, they couldn't leave, they couldn't even get to jail, because if you don't work, you so-called tuniyadets, meaning you are workless.
Parasite.
Parasite, yes. So some people got, if they were refuseniks and they were not industrious enough, they could, get to jail, because you have to work in that country, at that time at least. So for us to go to Israel is something questionable. Although my dad, now looking back, he was always saying, if they will start build ovens, Israel is the only place where Jewish people will survive and flourish. And I couldn't understand, on some level, I took my dad's words as given that he knows what he's talking about. But I never thought about it. It was nothing that would support like the thinking like that, but now I understand why he said that. He lost two of his parents. They were running from Romania, that was occupied by Nazis, and they had to cross the river, Dniester River, to get on the Soviet side, because Soviets, they did actually help Jews. They were transporting them, evacuating them. Mostly Jews were evacuated, no others. So where the credit is due, the credit is due. They were transporting Jews to the Eastern republics, such as Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. But unfortunately, they had malaria there. So my grandma, who supposedly got in the transport, got there and she got malaria. She died there, and she was buried in a brotherly grave somewhere. And my dad, all his life, he was trying to find the grave, but there were no like AIs or internet, so he couldn't. And my grandfather, he was an engineer, so he made rafts, supposedly, and he put people on the rafts to get to the other side. And he told the family to go on different rafts. So if somebody gets killed, at least somebody will survive. And it just like make me, feeling chills inside, like even saying that. And this is not the first time I'm saying like this story, but it was, then he went back to help people, and that's when he was like the bombing started and he drowned.
Oh boy. Oh boy. So what year did you and your husband and two children come here? And did your parents come with you or not?
No, my parents did not come with us. We left Moldavia because in Moldavia this was uproar, so-called revolution. It was nothing in the news because the government didn't want to show that there is something between brotherly republics. But obviously they didn't want Russians and they didn't want Jews. And that's why we needed to leave. So I didn't even have an idea, maybe we can go to another republic. And my parents are in Ukraine. It was no different for me. Like if in Moldavia this is happening, then it will happen in Ukraine. But my parents were well-to-do. They were professionals established, in the community. Nothing was going on there. So we thought we leave and then we'll call them because like for them to go through all these camps that we had to go through, it's very uneasy.
This is fascinating. So once you came here, can you tell us a little bit, obviously you have a medical degree and you practice. What was it like doing that transfer of degrees? Was that recognized in the United States right away, or did you have to go through some
No,
hoops?
you have to take exams. They do recognize your diploma if you finish like acknowledged school, but that does not give you the right to practice. So here there is a rule, you have to go through residency. I wanted to be a neurologist, so the residency is 4 years for neurologists. So I went to Albert Einstein, and then I wanted to actually do the fellowship in neurorehabilitation because my main aim is not to diagnose, not to be smart in diagnosing, which is good, like to be able to, without cutting, without MRIs, to know anatomy, knowing anatomy and making the proper diagnosis. But the proper diagnosis doesn't help the person if you cannot do the next step and help in rehabilitation. So I decided to do the rehabilitation fellowship, and I went to NYU for that. And then they offered me a position there in the brain injury unit as an attending, so I was there. So my main population was brain injury and multiple sclerosis.
Did you experience anything right after that? What year did you come to the United States?
So we left at 89.
Okay.
We came in 91.
Okay, so in the transition to the, coming to the United States, did you have any, and then to this day, any experiences with anti-Semitism here in the United States?
Well, I didn't really experience, but I had, like in Albert Einstein, it was like very diverse, group of residents. There were Czechs and Poles and Russians and Americans and Indians. So we were kind of a very tight-knit group, very friendly with each other, but there was a, even like a joke, like, oh, you killed my Christ.
Oh, dear.
Or, Jews are, super powerful, they will be okay, if there was some kind of incident. But I never thought about anti-Semitism until October 7. October 7 changed me as a person, changed me as a Jewish person who perceives like it's existential threat right now. And I'm fearing for our kids and grandkids because they live in the la la land, I think, of thinking that the equality and justice applies to all, but it seems like it applies to all but Jews. And that's what real anti-Semitism is. Criticizing Jewish people that doing bad deeds is not anti-Semitism. Criticizing some policies of Israeli government is not anti-Semitism. But wanting to wipe out the whole nation, that's anti-Semitism. It's not just anti-Zionism that they want to say. I'm not anti-Semite, I am anti-Zionist. No, if you want to wipe out Israel, then you want to wipe out the whole people, and that means that you're anti-Semite. And I wouldn't accept that.
So how did you become involved working with the UN NGO Committee End Anti-Semitism and Promote Peace? And I don't know any other organizations that, fight anti-Semitism.
Well, first, I belong to a lot of different organizations. So I am in Psychoanalytic Institute, the programs director. And, of course, there I cannot it is not a place for any activities like that. But I am also part of psychohistorical organizations. And psychohistory is about answering the whys of history, looking into psychological aspects, psychoanalytic phenomena that cause the person, the leader, or the group, or the nation to do these or those things, like to go into wars, to instigate, to create false flags, to use Jew hatred or any other hatred, and we answering the whys of history. Okay, so I decided, after October 7th, let me pull together a panel, and a panel consisted of 13 professionals from various fields. So I like it also because it's kind of transdisciplinary look at everything. And you were one of the people that were there, and that's how we got acquainted. And then you told me that you just started, brand new organization. So I decided this is what I want to do, to join. But there are other organizations, like there is a Jewish medical organization now. There is a Jewish Identity and Antisemitism Collective, which mostly involves mental health professionals who want to support people in mental health professions and with mental health issues related to antisemitism. So I'm a part of their group too. And we collaborate, as you know, like ESAP and JIAC, the two organizations that support each other. So I started the initiative of book celebrations. So we celebrate Jewish authors and their books, and maybe not the Jewish authors like Bill Tinglin that was here at your interviewed here too. He is a black man that is very much supportive of Jewish people, very passionate about Holocaust education, and I think education is what we're lacking.
Well, I just want to say to everyone that the Committee to End Anti-Semitism and Promote Peace at the United Nations is very, very grateful and enriched by you, and thank you. But now I want to go to it in a different direction, and that is, before we get to what individual responses to anti-Semitism might be should we encounter them, as a psychoanalyst, what are your thoughts about why people become anti-Semites?
Well, I think that it's not necessarily become. There is anti-Semitic unconscious, I think, that is getting invoked when, people hear slogans or people come from top-down approach, meaning they have ideas about theories or about like social justice kind of slogan, and then they come to a specific situation with that slogan in mind. They don't have an open mind. They don't know their blind spots. They don't dig the roots. Like we need to have the psychohistorical approach is bottom up. Bottom up means what? Examine the primary sources, examine the secondary sources, examine the history. What happens now, the history got wiped out in UNRWA schools because now they uncovered, and they were not there, Israelis, since 2005. They unilaterally withdrew, and they pulled their own people out of their land, yes? And it didn't help anyway, because that's where they were teaching children. If that happened from 2001 until 2023, that's few generation of children were taught hate. Were taught hate, and that's what's happening. Because if the hate is taught from the formative years, you cannot be not anti-Semite, at least in your unconscious. And then when you need to belong to a group, when you need to fit in, especially young people, then they embrace whatever the slogan, and underneath there is something they already have, like the basics, are anti-Semitic, and I think that's what's going on. Of course, we can have like other postulates, like, people are envious of Jewish people, but they were envious before. They always were envious. Jews are envied when they are strong, they are hated when they are weak, and they want to be wiped out no matter whether they are strong or they are weak. So this is what I see right now coming to the surface.
Thank you. And that certainly helps us understand why UNRWA is United Nations resettlement for Palestinians. I might add, the only group that has been unsettled. Every other ethnic group that is a result of war, they have been, taken care of. And when that segment of refugees, they move on to other countries and they're resettled. The only group with permanent standing are the Palestinians. So I certainly understand, and I have read and I've seen the textbooks that have been used by UNRWA and so on, and I'm personally delighted that we're no longer spending American tax dollars on those kinds of textbooks. But, now we come to the big but, we see an outpouring of anti-Semitism at the universities and the best universities here in the United States. Unless there's been latent anti-Semitism for them growing up, which is certainly possible, but I don't think they were really indoctrinated. This younger generation, I do think there's a lot in the curriculum that they're being miseducated. But for the current crop of college students, it's almost like it doesn't matter. They don't want to be educated, and they just listen to the chants that they are being told to participate in, and they're almost like automatons. So it's not just education. I think there's a lot more than that. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, but when I say education, it doesn't mean like to be educated Jews are good people and they deserve to be equal. The education is about history. Like even Jewish people, I learned, do not know the history of their own people, their own land, what happened. Because like before October 7, when you talked about World War II and the World Holocaust, again, Holocaust. We are tired from Holocaust. We don't want a Holocaust. We want it to be in the past. And it's not about invigorating Holocaust, but not to, like, never again, should be never again. And I think October 7 brought that back, that slogan back, but that has to be really never again. What happens in the elite institutions, my second alma mater is NYU, and it was like probably 80% Jewish professors. Now maybe 15% of Jewish professors. In I think in Harvard, as I think it's 4%. And in the past, mostly Jews, especially came from Europe. They became professors. The new school was all Jewish, emigres, and now it's promoting Hamas policies and all that. So they don't call it we promote Hamas, but they're standing for what Hamas is saying. So it's, for me, it's the same. Those are cover-up words that just covering the anti-Semitism. So for me, there is an anti-Semitism with big A and there is a small a. What I experienced in Soviet Union, I think it was a small a anti-Semitism. What we're experiencing now in the world is a big A anti-Semitism, and it's existential, and we need to kind of educate about history, educate about Jewish values. Children in the families are not educated about the values. It's not going out for dinner, on Passover, or to have somebody at Passover dinner, or having high holidays, for an hour. It is more than that. It is about the values. So
I want to thank you, Ina, because this is fascinating, and this could go on. And I'm going to ask you very impromptu if you'd be willing to do a part 2 with us, because we're just at the beginning of this, because I would really like to know what you think about what our responses to anti-Semitism should be. So I want to thank you very, very much. I want to thank you for participating in part 1. I hope this will be part 1 of our series. Sure. And for the audience, be sure to subscribe, share, and stay connected for more engaging conversations. Until next time, make it our time. Take care and be well.